Welcome to Library Out Loud. I'm Erin Dodge, Communications Specialist here with the library. Today I talk with Patrick Rowe, Executive Director with SCLD, and Sherry Boggs, the Collection Development Librarian for Youth Materials here at the library. And we're talking about intellectual freedom and why it's important to you. You don't want to miss it. Welcome, Patrick and Sherry. You guys have both been working here at the library for quite a while. And so you know a lot about things that go on at the library. Can you tell us a little bit about what is intellectual freedom and how it affects the public or why it's important to the public?
Sure. I'll start. So intellectual freedom is defined as the right of library users to seek and receive information free of restriction as guaranteed by the First Amendment.
Okay.
So that's kind of your baseline definition for what that means.
Okay.
Why it's important to the public is because it is indeed an exercise of your First Amendment rights. So,
okay.
We like to see the libraries are champions of the First Amendment. That we provide resources free of restriction. That could be, we don't do prejudicial labeling. We don't sequester items. We let you be the decider what's right for you.
Okay.
And if you're a parent or caregiver for your kids.
Okay. So I think most people think First Amendment, that's freedom of speech. So this goes with that. And so freedom to seek information, is that kind of what this is? Okay.
And part of the First Amendment is also freedom to assemble.
Okay.
And because we have meeting rooms that the public can use, it's not just about materials, but it's also about services.
Okay. Yeah.
Which people don't necessarily realize with the First Amendment, that there's a couple different aspects to that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I think, we hear a lot, we talk a lot about First Amendment, but we at the library, we put it to work.
Okay.
To Sherry's point,
Makes sense.
Use of the meeting rooms, use of our materials,
Right.
Use of our displays and exhibits, use of the spaces, those are all covered by First Amendment rights. And it's both the seeking of and the use of those that is covered.
Okay.
And we talk about library materials in particular. The library materials, their existence, their presence is protected by the First Amendment as well.
Okay.
And then so both the creation and of those materials is protected, and then your right as a user to access it is also protected.
Okay. Great. And so we're talking about this right now. So what is that role that public libraries play? Like, what is their responsibility there? And are there issues that libraries face with this respect to intellectual freedom?
Yes.
Short answer, yes.
I think, the First Amendment considerations have been a mainstay for libraries. I mean, since the very first one was created in Philadelphia back in 17 whatever. I mean, like Sharon was saying, it undergirds everything we do.
Okay.
And there's certainly more recently been a lot of attention on First Amendment issues pertaining to libraries and efforts to potentially restrict or change access to these, what we consider and what the law considers to be constitutionally protected materials. So it's certainly a friend of mine for a lot of library professionals out there right now.
Okay.
And also, it's certainly out there in the sort of the media sphere and general awareness as well.
Right. And so when there is restriction, I mean, my brain is like, oh, what's that impact to the library customer, the person coming in the door? You want to speak a little bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, it just comes down to people being able to access the materials that you want or need to be able to access.
Right.
And as libraries, the thing that is important to remember about the First Amendment is it protects everybody.
Right.
And sometimes, when groups or individuals might be targeting a particular book title or a list of titles, it's important to remember that the First Amendment protects the things that you and your family like to read. It's not, we take it really seriously. Like my job, I'm a collection development librarian. There's two of us for the district, one adult, one youth. I'm the youth one. And we really make an effort when we're buying for the district to make sure we represent not just one side or another side of an argument, but all the sides, to make sure that we have a well-rounded look at whatever issue somebody wants to be investigating or learning more about.
Okay.
Or even in terms of entertainment, making sure that there are all different kinds of tastes and genres represented. it's just super important to provide that balance. And so for us, it's not just an intellectual exercise, it's a practical exercise.
Okay, so you're, with your job in particular, you're putting it into practice every day.
Right.
With, I mean, people can request materials.
Yes.
And then there's also materials that you find out there, and you're like, oh, I know we've had people interested in this topic from outsides before, so let's get some more materials about whatever the topic is.
Yeah, customers can request titles, and we really use those to kind of guide what we're offering. Like, I know in my job, I've seen a lot of interest in materials that homeschoolers like to use.
Sure.
And the other thing to remember, like, it's limited shelf space. Like, we don't censor what we buy, but we do have to think of how many different people or communities can use the materials and what we have space for. So a lot of my decisions are based on, somebody might ask for something kind of specialized or unique to their group and their group's interests. But I always look at it like, could other people be using this for homework? Or, are there other people that would want to access this?
Okay.
And we kind of go about it that way, if that makes sense.
It does. And talking about like physical shelf space, that is limited, but we also invest a lot in digital materials. And I know from some of the lists that you and our other collection development librarian put together, there is a lot of variety in those materials as well. So
good. Yeah. I'm glad you noticed.
All the time.
Our physical collection is pretty static in terms of size, right?
Yeah.
It's about 400,000 items, give or take.
Right.
That's what we have the linear shelf feet for. But our digital collection is
vast.
Over 1 million.
Over 1 million, and it doesn't take up any shelf space. So that one's not a contender for size restrictions.
Exactly. All right. So we did talk a bit about collection development. Any other thoughts that go into it that when we're looking at materials? I'm wondering like about banned books and challenge books and and how those come about and kind of how that works in the collection development world.
At our district, customers, we do have a mechanism for people to express concern about anything that's in our collection. All libraries do, I think. We call it our request for review of materials form. And if you're a card holder with the district, you can fill it out, and we will get back to you within 14 business days. And we take it seriously. Like, we look at the customers' concerns about something, and we'll look back at our thinking process when we first ordered it. We'll look and see how many other libraries in Washington State, for instance, have the title. We'll look at reviews. We'll look to see if it was a customer request. We'll look to see how well it's checked out. So we just kind of vet our own process when that happens. And it's important for people to have that mechanism, I think, as part of that freedom of that's part of freedom of speech, be able to voice concerns about something. Okay. So I don't know if that answers your question, but in terms of books that are being banned or challenged on a national level, sometimes you tend to see the same titles show up. With us, sometimes it means moving it to another part of the library. And I'm not talking about like what's happened in some libraries in Idaho where they have kind of an 18 and older area and kids can't enter. It's more, looking at something and being like, I think this would really be better in the teen section, say, than the children's section.
I see.
Sometimes with graphic novels, after reviewing them, it's like, this would be better in the adult section.
Okay.
And it's just kind of, again, like reviewing our thought process and making sure things are shelved in the right area of the library. But people still have access to them.
Right. I'll just add that I think Sherry's spot on with that. And, we are a popular materials library. Okay. So back to those 400,000 items, right? Like, materials on our shelves have to appeal to our customers, right? So, we're not here to stock what our idea of a library should be or what it should contain. We're here to provide resources that are of interest to the people we serve.
Right.
And so if there's a book on the shelf, there's a good chance it's there because your neighbor, your favorite barista, whoever it might be, they want that book there and they're checking out. We operate on free market principles, right?
Sure.
Supply and demand. If an item doesn't check out, it doesn't have a place here, right? It doesn't serve a need. It doesn't serve an interest. We're going to get rid of it. deaccession it, excuse me, and then make room for something new, right? So like, so that popular materials piece is really important because we tailor our collection to be responsive to the needs and interests of the people we serve, which is a service population about 250,000 people. Right. So you've got 250,000 perspectives and ideas and information needs out there, and we're obligated, and we take it really seriously, as Sherry's saying, to provide materials that respond to those interests.
Right, and I think that's a key idea, that we're a popular materials library and not. We're not a private library, that's for sure. And academic libraries have probably different standards and different things that they need to focus on. So we're really about giving those materials that people want.
Right.
And if there's a material they don't want, then they're not checking it out. Yeah, we have to make room on shelves for new books, because there's always new stuff coming out, right?
Yeah. And there's always demand for that,
right?
And our obligation is to present that information in a content neutral manner, right?
Yeah,
sure.
That's not, that just means like we make it available, and you, the user, determines, is that okay for you?
Right.
And if you're a parent or a caregiver or guardian, you decide if that's right for your kids.
Right.
You don't make that choice for somebody else. The library doesn't make that choice for you.
Right.
We invest in trust, quite honestly, that you have the ability to make those determinations for yourself and those you're responsible for.
Right. Right.
And I'll just echo that, saying, follow on that, when I talk to parents out there, they don't want the government making that decision for them, right?
Right.
I always seem to talk to them at either sporting events or sporting banquets, but when they find out I learned the work of the library, the question naturally kind of turns towards this, and I've yet to hear a parent say, I want the library, I want the government to make that decision for me as a parent. They're very confident they have the right and authority to do that, and they don't need our help.
Absolutely.
And we don't, as a library, don't want to interfere with that.
Right. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I love just going to the shelves and finding cool stuff, and I wouldn't want somebody to say, oh, well, that one's not for you.
Right.
Right.
Do you have a green thumb? Are you new to gardening? No matter your skill level, every season is gardening season at the library. We have an extensive collection of gardening books and online resources that can plant the seeds for new ideas and help you cultivate your indoor and outdoor projects. We also have seed libraries. Our Take and Give seed libraries are currently accepting donations of vegetable, herb, and flower seeds. Bring your heirloom seeds into a library to share with other gardeners for spring planting. Learn more today at scld.org.
Okay. Now there are a couple things out there. One's called the Library Bill of Rights, and one's called the Freedom to Read Statement. Do you want to talk a little bit about what those are?
Well, I'm sure Sherry's memorized them both. We're safe right now.
I'll do the Freedom to Read if you want to do the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, so they're the kind of two kind of foundational documents we cite and sort of point to in our own policies that sort of established kind of the roles and responsibilities of libraries in this sort of in our responsibility for providing resources under the sort of the shield of the First Amendment, and our obligations there. And so that's kind of the general what they are, and they kind of lay out sort of kind of the philosophy, I guess it was probably right to say, the philosophy of our approach to intellectual freedom and our obligations there. And they're old documents. These are not new things. I'm going to cheat here. The Bill of Rights was first written in 1939.
Okay.
And the Freedom to Read Statement was from, I think, 1953. So So, again, these are not new ideas. These are not new considering, these are foundational to what public libraries do and are.
80 plus and 70 plus years, decades.
But they do get reviewed and amended periodically.
Right, yes, yeah.
Okay.
And what I like about the Freedom to Read Statement is that one was the one that came out in 1953, which I think if I looked at history, that would be kind of the McCarthy era.
Right.
And that one's more specifically in response to censorship.
Okay.
And what I like about that one is it's publishers, librarians, and booksellers. Like we're all kind of in the same fight. And so that was, the first one was more, the Bill of Rights was more about libraries. This one's more about information, books, and censorship. And I love that there's that collaboration between, book people, information people.
And if somebody's afraid, like, oh, someone's going to get a hold of my library record and see all the books I've read?
Your library record is protected from disclosure under state law. So,
Okay.
actually coming back a little bit, not only do we operate under the requirements of the First Amendment and federal law, we also operate under the requirements of Washington state law. Washington state Constitution echoes the First Amendment in these free speech considerations. And then Washington law in particular protects your library record from disclosure. So no one can ask for it unless you have a court order to back it up.
Okay. All right. So someone would need a court order to get that information.
But I think it underlines how essential, that freedom is, that the state legislature, again, decades ago, took steps to preserve and protect your library record from disclosure. I think just it echoes how essential these First Amendment rights are, that you both have the federal and state laws weighing in on your right to have that free access and not have interference in your use of resources.
Okay.
And I think I also like add what Sherry said, like Library Bill of Rights talks about the library, but the Freedom to Read talks about the user, right?
Okay.
So I think it's kind of a good way to kind of frame them as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Any other aspects that you guys want to talk about on this topic?
I mean, we could go for hours.
I know. I'm like in my head, I'm like, what have we not already talked about?
Well, I mean, I assume there's been some some cases about sort of around this topic that have happened and kind of hopefully reinforced everything.
Yeah, I think again, and I haven't been in library school for decades as well, but there's I had a class all about library law, and so again, sort of these, I don't think we'll go into the weeds of what these cases are.
But
again, I mean, there are decades of established case law that have clarified and affirmed what these First Amendment rights are as they pertain to library resources. So again, we consider this a pretty settled matter of law, and we take our obligations to provide these resources free of restriction, free of prejudice really seriously too, right?
Right.
Because we have a legal obligation, we have legal liability if we don't. I think that's the other piece
Okay.
To mention too, is that if we start putting our thumb on the scale,
Right.
if we start kind of interfering with access, we're steering the library into First Amendment violations potentially, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So like it's not just.
We don't do this out of the goodness of our hearts. We actually, we believe in it.
And.
Yeah.
Yes, and.
I mean, we believe in it, and even if we had our doubts, we are required and obligated by law to do it.
Right. So,
we are a nation of laws. We are a state of laws.
Right.
And we're not just making up as we go along, right? There's.
Right. From what we're saying, the library does believe and find these laws to be right in line with our own thinking as a library. So yeah, there is sort of that. Yep, we're going to provide access to everyone, and but at the same time, like you're saying, it's also protected by law.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have an obligation to follow that law, right?
Right.
Yeah. So and that's why we exist. That's why RCW 27.12 outlines everything we do. But there's these fundamental considerations we have to. If we are interfering, we are just as liable for action as well. So
yeah. And that's something I sometimes have to talk about with newer staff.
Okay.
That will sometimes express surprise at a title that we have that doesn't align with the values that they feel we might have as the library.
Okay.
And it's important to remind our staff that, this is all protected by First Amendment stuff. And also it's all of our taxpayers' money. It's, we're stewards of that, and we need to make sure that everybody that we serve is represented in some way and can find themselves, represented on the shelves when they come in. And so sometimes there might be stuff that you don't necessarily agree with or views that you might be surprised that the library has materials that are offering that point of view. Right. And that's another thing. When I was looking at the Library Bill of Rights and the Freedom to Read statement it's important to remember the library doesn't necessarily, we don't endorse the point of view of things that we offer. That's up to, the people that we serve to make those decisions. We just make sure that it's available.
Okay. That's a good point to kind of distinguish, is that the library is not taking any kind of stance on anything. They're not advocating for any specific thing. We're trying to provide a breadth of ideas for people to pursue whatever they're pursuing.
Right.
Exactly.
We like to joke, you find something both to affirm and defend your worldview in life. But as Sherry said, that applies to staff as well, right?
Yeah,
sure.
Well, you're going to professionally, we're going to professionally and cheerfully provide you resources access that we never cross our threshold at home, right?
Sure.
But again, it's not our role to determine that for you.
Right.
That is your First Amendment right to make that decision for yourself, and we are going to uphold and defend that right for you, regardless of our personal opinions.
Yes. Well, and I know it's incredible what the staff can help people find too. They'll come in the library and say, well, I need a book about XYZ in the 18th century. Or something, and they'll look for it, and it might not have been anything they would have ever checked out just for lack of interest or whatever, but they'll help find that for the customer, the person who walks in and says, I'm interested in this topic, how can I find it, where do you have it?
Yeah.
So
and that's, cataloging is a big part of the freedom to read. It's making sure that people can actually find one of the thousands and thousands of titles that we have.
One of the 400,000.
Only physical, maybe another 1 million plus digital.
Right. So 1.5 million.
1.5 million items, yeah. Which is crazy to think about, honestly.
You can't think in those numbers. It's too overwhelming.
Right, exactly, yeah.
What does my son like to do right now? Where can I find that book?
Exactly.
All right. Well, great. Any last thoughts you think people should know about the library? You probably have a million thoughts. It's going to be hard to find one or two.
Want to share anything? Any closing thoughts?
We're awesome.
We are. I think to the point where, people, if they're not finding the materials that they're looking for, and it's a popular materials, like it's not some archaic academic tome.
Right, and we can get that for them.
But we can get that. Oh, that's
through
right.
interlibrary loan.
Yeah.
When you mentioned academic libraries earlier, I'm glad that just popped into my head because we can get specialized things through interlibrary loan. Okay. Like we don't necessarily have room on the shelf for really specialized things.
Right.
But if you're one of our card holders with the Spokane County Library District, we can interlibrary loan that for you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's now,
so
now we're more than 1.5 million.
The world is
everybody else's stuff.
I'll just add, I think, just reiterate what you're talking about. This is we approach this with a high degree of responsibility and, and sense of purpose, but also a high degree of respect, right? So we respect the customers, their points of view, and their right, again, to access the information. And we'll do everything we can to help facilitate that access for them, regardless of what the topic is.
Sure.
And so I just want to, this is we not only do we privilege and defend the First Amendment, we privilege and defend people's right to seek whatever information they want under the protection, regardless of what the topic is.
Okay.
So.
Right. This is why I love working at the library. Well, thank you so much for talking about this topic and sharing it. And it was a good talk.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it.